Good morning and welcome to the 6th episode of our podcast,
where we drink tea and navigate the balance between school and personal life.
I'm Sophia Safe.
And I'm Sophia Curry.
And this is Sip and Spill.
Welcome back to the Tea Journal.
The topic we'll be touching on today is understanding and managing anxiety, along with some other topics.
Just a quick disclaimer and trigger warning, this episode is a rough one. We will be talking about some pretty heavy subjects such as anxiety, depression, and self-harm.
In addition, Sophia and I are not experts by any means, so if you feel you need help, please contact a medical or mental health professional.
Also utilize the Suicide Prevention Hotline by dialing 998, which will also be provided in the description below. So, I think the first thing we can touch on is what is anxiety?
So, according to the APA, anxiety is an emotion characterized by feelings of tension, worried thoughts, and physical changes like increased blood pressure.
So, essentially anxiety is not just an emotion that's all in your head. There are physiological changes that, come along with it, and it can be medically characterized as well.
Right. I feel like a lot of people believe that anxiety is all in your head.
Yeah.
And it's something that can be easily dismissible.
And it's not, and I think, it's taboo to talk about that. And I think the more that message that there are medically related things the more that message is spread, can really help open up the discussion. I know
right.
In comparison to 20, 30 years ago, it's definitely less taboo to talk about.
Yes.
But, it can always be expanded upon more. I think it's easier to point out a broken bone than it is to say, I have anxiety. Because where do you point that out? It could be easily mixed up with other things, like people just saying, oh, you're just nervous.
Or oh, you just have low blood pressure. Or
right.
You have high blood pressure. It's in your family.
Right.
You're just taking something and associating it with something else for attention.
Yes. And I think that's so hard. So we can say, where does it come from? So anxiety can stem from a whole plethora of things. But to list some, it can come from genetics, brain chemistry, lifestyle choices, traumatic experiences, and stressful situations. So
I feel like the traumatic experiences and stressful situations part is a lot more taboo than genetics and brain chemistry is, I think, now.
And I think the genetics and brain chemistry is not even talked about. I don't even think that's widely known.
Right. I feel like because it's not known as much, it feels a lot less taboo, considering we have a lot more medical advancements.
Yes.
It's easier to say that it comes down through family than it is you're one person in a group of people that has anxiety.
Yeah. And I think, genetics and brain chemistry connect back to medical, like how that can be medically related. And then, moving into lifestyle choices, anxiety can stem from where you put yourself, like the people you're around,
right.
what you're exposed to on social media and TV and even at work or school.
Yes.
And then even the food you eat can kind of help enhance that.
I agree. I feel like especially as teenagers, a good amount of us deal with anxiety when it comes to test taking.
Yes.
And the school environment in itself is very stressful. We talked about this in previous episodes where we feel like there's a lot of expectations and a lot more pressure to succeed in school now.
Oh, yeah. And I think, we touched on this in episode 4, I believe, where we were talking about generational differences with our parents. And,
right.
It for them to be able to connect to the pressures and the social media pressures that we have now and the anxiety, I feel like, there's definitely statistics that show an increased level of anxiety and mental health issues with teens.
I also feel like when it comes to our parents' past, it was a lot more taboo to talk about mental health, and it was something that you would keep to yourself and not something you would seek help for.
Yes.
And I feel like it's good that we made this big step forward where we are trying to get people to push for seeking help.
Yeah. Traumatic experiences, if we want to talk about that one, PTSD, those are all really big ones that a lot of people don't talk about.
And you also talked about rising statistics now when it comes to anxiety. I feel like when it comes to PTSD, there's also rising statistics in self-harm.
Yes.
And
for sure.
We've both dealt with personal experiences in that.
And that's something, personally, it's really hard to talk about, but it's okay.
Agreed.
Like, one of the things that, in terms of traumatic experiences, I've learned a lot through owning your truth, and I've seen that with my mom specifically.
Right.
She had a lot of traumatic experiences as a result of her disability. And, as a kid, for her, it was really hard growing up. And then, as an adult, she decided to take charge of her life, and she said, you know what, I'm going to own my truth. And there's a speech out there, if you guys ever find it, I might try and link it down below, but it's a really powerful one that she gave about her story, and she owned her truth, and she said, look, and this is where it put me now, and it's helped me grow to be the best version of myself. And there's so much power in owning your truth like that, instead of, letting it control you internally, but, coming out and accepting it and saying, yes, I struggled, but,
it's helped me get to where I am.
Yes, and it's okay to struggle, and it's okay to go and look for help, Stressful. You want to touch on stressful experiences,
Right. So we had previously talked about test taking, and it also comes with social situations.
Yeah.
For example, you're at a party. I know, like, sometimes it's hard to talk to new people. And honestly, also, public speaking.
Yeah.
That's a big anxiety trigger for me. My voice immediately starts shaking. And I talk super fast. And it's hard to manage.
Yeah.
So how would we manage anxiety such as that?
I think, one of the things that's really great that I've learned, managing, so if we're talking about managing it in the moment, deep breathing, controlling, I don't want to say controlling. That sounds kind of restrictive. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think more like managing how you breathe in the moment.
Okay.
Like taking deeper breaths, slowing your breathing, becoming aware of your body. And slow breathing can, it's literally medically shown to calm your nervous system because, your body goes into that fight or flight because your anxiety level rises, and this is a situation and your body responds as if it's in danger. When consciously that you're not, but subconsciously your body is like
responding as if you are.
Right. The adrenaline's going.
I feel that breathing exercises don't work as well for me. You mentioned this actually in one of our really early episodes, the 5 4 3 2 1 method.
Yes.
I have used that method every single time now, and it works really well.
I love that method.
And I don't remember exactly what sense is where.
Yeah.
But honestly, it works for anything. It's sight, smell.
So it's 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch,
Okay.
3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste.
Okay.
So basically what you do, to touch on that, is you take a moment. So this is, another way to ground yourself. And so you sit and you look around and you consciously identify 5 things you can see. So you might point out the color of the walls and someone's hair color, and I see the table in front of me or the water bottle. So for example, if I were to do it right now, the walls around me are kind of beige, Sophia's hair is black, my water bottle is pink, there are 2 computers in front of me, and then I'm wearing white pants. Okay. Yeah, I think that's 5.
Yeah.
And then
4 things you can touch.
So yeah.
So then I can touch my phone, Sophia's sweater, my hair, the computer. Is that 4?
Yeah, I think that's 4.
Okay.
And then 3 things you can hear. So, we can hear the fan, the fridge in the background.
I can hear you talking.
Yeah, I can hear our voices. And then I can just kind of hear the outside, the birds or whatever outside. 2 things you can smell. This is always the part that kind of gets me, but this is, the smell and taste are what really ground you because they pull you into the moment.
What I usually do for smells, I smell my perfume.
Yes.
I always have my perfume on my wrist, and I reapply it before, public speaking usually, because that way, or, on the side of my finger, So if I just bring my finger up to my nose, I can just smell that, and it works.
It's like a comfort smell. Like, yeah, having comforting things on you are also, I believe, is really helpful. Like, one of the things for me, I'm a very sensory type person, and since I was little, you know, I have like this little pillow thing that says like an angel sleeping here. I got that when I was a baby.
I used to have that pillow.
Really?
Is it like pink with the purple like edges?
I think, well, it has pink lettering, but it's the same thing. But it's this tiny pillow, and I used to sleep with it every night, but the edges were really soft, and I liked running my finger along, like, the one corner. I still do it now, and I really like soft things, so I have hair ties on my wrist, and, you know, I'll rub my finger against that, or, like, I used to have, like, a thread bracelet that I used to do that with. So, those are fidget rings. Yeah, I have fidget rings. So, those are all things that, you know, can help, you know, do that. And then for the taste, usually it's just taste whatever you last ate or just notice whatever's in your mouth. So that's something. And then, you know, refocusing is a good thing. You can kind of talk about, like, or not even talk about, but refocusing, like, okay, this is where I am in the moment, but it's okay, you know, taking a moment to accept where you are and accept whatever happens, and that, you know, it won't be the end of the world. So that's kind of in the moment. And then I think overall, exercise, mindfulness, grounding, visualizations, those are all really good. You know, I think, like we said, personally, with the self-harming and all of that,
I feel like is an unhealthy way to manage anxiety. Sure. I know that if I'm ever like upset at something, and it's not just like a regular it really does depend on what it is. But if I'm having like so many things bearing down at me at once, it gets really hard to keep my hands tied.
Right. The overwhelming, everything's coming at you.
Yeah.
And then it's just like that one perfect storm comes together, you know, it falls on the worst moment, and then you just, like, you slip. I think personally for me, like, I usually have a really good handle and control on it, and I've had for years, and then I relapsed really bad because I had a horrible week. Everything was coming at me, all these emotions, personally, school-wise, all this work. My anxiety went up, and it hit me at a time where my depression was really kicking me in the butt, and I was like, and I snapped, and I couldn't control it, and I, you know, took that unhealthy way. And when that happens, I think you really, in the moment, you need to know where your support system is.
Right, yeah. Which is
how to avoid that, like how to pull yourself from that situation, put yourself in a different environment, you know.
And I feel like going back to the stigma that we were talking about, it's hard to talk about self-harm, and it's hard to describe why we do it.
Yeah.
Like,
I think that's a huge question. Like, you know, whenever people that care about you find out.
Yeah.
Like, I know when my parents found out, their question was, why?
Yeah.
And I couldn't really answer it well because it's an impulsive mechanism.
Yeah, and it's like, there's no
rhyme or reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than stress, big, like my aunt said previously, big sad, big mad.
Yeah.
Just these large overbearing feelings that you can't get out. It's an internalized harm. I know a lot of people go physically. I know I've dealt with people like breaking things and throwing things.
I've personally, now I know I can't do that because I know I would severely regret breaking something.
Exactly.
But I do, like, I know internally in my mind, I can see myself, like, smashing everything around myself. And just, like, I want to break things. And it's just, like, you know, it feels like that would be a release. And honestly, I think there are places, you know, called break rooms or whatever.
Yeah,
or it's like smash rooms. Rec rooms. I honestly, like, if you really feel you need to do that, like, that, I feel like would be a perfect place to go because you're allowed to break. The point is to break stuff. But, you know, that is not always, that is usually not available.
No, it's nothing, that's not something that's immediately accessible.
I feel
which is something that self-harm is, unfortunately.
Yeah, like, you know, people, it's so easy to find a way to take it with you wherever you go, and I think it's because, I think one of the reasons why we do it, not like specifically why, but why we feel it helps, is because it feels like a quick way out.
Yeah.
And it's easier feeling it physically than it is mentally.
To be honest, I still don't understand why I do it.
I don't really either.
Because every time I regret it.
Me too.
But I still relapse.
And it's really hard. And honestly, you know, that's where you go to the people that you trust and you talk about it.
I mean, it's still so hard to do that on its own.
Yeah.
I still find myself holding back.
Yeah. Me too. I mean, this is the most publicly I think I've ever spoken about it.
Me too. I avoid it, I think, at any cost.
Yeah.
But I feel like the things that are hard to talk about are the things that need to be talked about.
Yes. That holds so true. Because, you know, I'm not usually so candid about my issues because, you know, personally with where I stand at school, like with my leadership positions, nobody wants to walk around knowing that, like, you know, their president of their class is doing this.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's so much power in knowing that.
Right.
And saying, I'm not alone. And I think it goes back to, you know, the whole Me Too movement with the whole rape and all of that, and where people came out and said, Me Too. And there was so much power in that because it's saying, you know, you're not alone. And I think that's one of the biggest struggles that us teens have is we feel alone.
Yeah.
And you're not. Like,
no. I feel like that's our mantra for today is that you aren't alone.
Yeah, you're not alone.
And talking about it will get you places.
Yeah. And I think this connects perfectly into what next week's episode will be about. A little sneak peek is, you know, it'll be all about your support system. And this is, you know, a perfect connection this is when your support system is at its utmost importance.
Yeah.
And if you feel you don't have one, I urge you, even you can find a support system within yourself.
Yes, I agree.
To find an outlet other than doing that.
I know one of my friends, before finding her like people support system, escaped through books.
Yes.
And I know I've done that. I know you've done that.
I've done music too. Music is where I live. Anytime the world feels so overwhelming, I drown myself in music because it blocks everything out.
Yes.
And it
doesn't let you think, especially when you blast it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that when I feel like self-harming, I immediately plug myself in.
Me too.
And I start blasting music so I can't hear my thoughts.
It's not even just, I mean, for you that might be it, but for me it actually processes my thoughts, but it distracts me from doing that because I can sit and I can listen to something and connect to something else. So like, you know, I'll listen to the music that connects to how I'm feeling and I'll just sob and I'll cry and I'll lose it. And that is a really freeing feeling because you know, if you're somebody who does hold back, you need to find the way that you can lose yourself. Like, you know, and I mean that in not like a lose yourself crazy kind of way, but like let it go and process it.
My grandmother always used to tell me, I used to like pick at my lips, and I still bite my lips when I'm anxious.
Oh, I pick my lips.
And she always used to tell me, sit on your hands.
I sit on my hands.
I started doing that for self-harm too.
That's smart.
And I all I do when I start thinking about it, my first thought is plug myself in, sit on my hands, close my eyes. And that is so far the only way that's actually been able to stop me.
Because it's a conscious, active, I think we need to, you know, one of the important things is finding a active way to pull yourself out. Because if you're just sitting there, even sometimes like mentally, but literally actively rerouting your brain, to something else, you know. It might not be, don't ignore your feelings, because that is the worst thing you can do, because, you know, I've seen it in so many people come up and bite them in the butt so hard in so many different ways, you know, and it'll build and build. And even if you think, you know, you've processed and handled it and you're really good at compartmentalizing, it will majorly affect your life. Like, my relationship was majorly affected because of a problem like that. You know, the both of us would seriously compartmentalize, especially, like, you know, he would compartmentalize and it would come back and bite us. And it was his own personal issues, but
yeah,
it
but it
truly
affects the both of you, especially when you're in like a close relationship with someone. What you do also affects the people around you.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's also, like, thinking about the fact that my actions to myself also affect the people around me. Being a people pleaser and caring about what other people think help a lot with stopping myself.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
If I feel like I'm harming someone else, by harming myself, it'll
in
a way stop me.
Because we care. Like, you never want to hurt the people around you, and that's a lot of the times what got me through. And one of the other things that got me through was, you know, I was clean for like almost 3 years. And that's a really big deal to me, but you know, it was, don't ruin the progress you have already made. And that held me back for years, obviously, you know, but that 1 week was just that terrible.
I remember that week.
Yeah, and it was, you know, Sophia watched me go through it, and it was horrible.
It was,
you know,
it was one of the worst weeks I think I've ever seen someone go through.
Yeah.
It was really bad.
It was rough. And, you know,
another thing is working on something new. Yeah. During that week, I think, is when we started this podcast.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was. And I think that is really what brought me out. And it might have even been the following week, but it brought me out. This brought me out because it gave me something to look forward to. It was new. It gave me, you know, a sense of purpose, and I enjoyed it. Like, I didn't feel pressure.
Exactly.
I think it was for the both of us, that kind of release.
Agree. I look forward to this. Like,
oh, we both look so look forward to this.
We are so excited that we released a new website, an Instagram, all of this new and shiny things that we're looking forward to, that we're not expecting for it to succeed necessarily.
But we're doing it for ourselves.
Exactly.
And for our own mental health well-being, and that's so important, you know. So honestly, I think the main takeaway would probably be anxiety and, you know, all those big feelings you're feeling, they're real.
They're real.
And it's okay to feel them, and it's okay to go and lean on people.
Yeah, it's okay to seek help.
Yeah, and there's, like, you know, the ways to manage it can be, you know, taking those breaths, taking those moments. You know, we love the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method, refocusing, you know, for the in the moment stuff. And then, you know, for long term, you know, exercise can get you moving, you know, process those feelings, grounding yourself, you know, visualizing things, putting yourself in like a good place, you know, really visualize where you feel at peace, and mindfulness, meditating on those things.
And just before we wrap up the tea journal for today, we're going to repeat the disclaimer in that we are not experts by any means, and if you need help, please contact a medical or mental health professional.
And also, please utilize the Suicide Prevention Hotline by dialing 998, which will also be provided in the description below.
So, that pretty much wraps up our tea journal for this week.
Welcome to Tea and Textbooks, where we talk about the academic aspects of high school.
For today's segment, we're going to be talking about working through studying and test anxiety.
Like we've said before, Sophia and I are not experts by any means, so if you feel you need help, please contact a medical or mental health professional.
Also utilize the Suicide Prevention Hotline by dialing 998, which will also be provided in the description below.
So I think the first thing we can talk about is how to make a structured study plan.
Yes.
That can really help with a lot of studying and test anxiety, because I think personally for us, we're very organized people. Right. So, seeing that plan can help reduce the anxiety, and it'll break it down into more manageable pieces.
Knowing that you know the material on the test can also help reducing test anxiety.
Yes. I love making checklists.
Yes, I agree. And Dr. Yut, our math teacher, she makes us study guides, practice tests. Practice tests. And Sophia and I do that 3 times before every test. 1 to learn, 1 to practice, and then 1 to simulate the actual test.
Mock tests. Learn, practice, and mock.
And I feel like the mock is the most helpful because we keep each other unmuted so we can hear each other's paper rustling.
Yeah. And pencils really moving. Simulating that test environment.
Exactly. And I feel like that helps a lot with understanding what's going on. We set a timer.
Yeah.
Like as if the bell is going to ring at any moment. And so it really does simulate the fact that you know whether you're going to finish in time or not.
Yeah.
And you would make a practice test yourself for any subject. I went up to my chem teacher once and asked her, do you have a review of the topics that you want me to learn before the test?
Yeah.
And she's given them to me, and I feel like taking that step to know your teacher also helps with anxiety.
Yeah. I mean, I know personally for chem, for me, I started making documents where in class I start typing, all the important things she says. I'll start anything that she says. This is a test question. This is something I would put on a test. And then, I'll find like a way, Quizlet has like a new feature. I don't know if you guys know, where you can make a practice test study guide. I've tried that, but I think you might have to pay to make more than one. But I've done it in the past, and it's been, sort of helpful. So that could be a really good utilization tool. But I like making practice tests that I can practice with to get, good test questions. And I think it's really smart that you go to your teacher. I think I'll consider doing that with my chem teacher because I never thought about that for some reason.
Doing it with all your teachers, honestly. Oh, speaking of my chem teacher, one time I went to her after school, like, right after the bell rang, I ran to her class. This was the day that my mom was able to pick me up.
Right.
So obviously you have to plan it right. But I went up to her and I asked her, it was the day before the quiz, and I asked her all the questions I had.
Yes.
And I feel like most of your teachers, and hopefully all of your teachers, should be happy to help you.
Yeah.
And they can't just say, sorry, can't answer that.
Right.
Like, you are taking the extra effort to learn the material and ask your teachers.
And that looks good with your teachers, honestly. Like, that, showing initiative is really important. So, like, you can build your study plans around that. Like, break it apart into pieces, and then, like, take it bit by bit. Like, and, I know with a busy life, it's so hard to, like, really study every night. And I know I struggle with that. Like, I always say I'm going to start studying, and then I literally never do.
Yep.
But, finding small things, like, I think one of the things I started doing is I find 2 to 3 problems for each thing, because I know it's so hard to study. So maybe 1 or 2 days before the test, because, it's so hard, so busy. I'll find one simpler question and then a harder question online. There's so many resources out there. You could literally type in blah, blah, blah worksheet PDF and it'll be there. So that's what I do, I think, and it really helps.
I feel like when it comes to study anxiety or even homework anxiety, we've talked about this method before, but the Pomodoro timer when it comes to understanding your limits.
Yes. And it's important to take breaks. You can't just keep studying.
No.
Like, if you're really like a locked in zone in person, I get it. But when you feel yourself like starting to be like, oh no, and you're starting to, I don't want to say break down, but you're starting to fatigue, I guess is a good word for it. Go to the bathroom, splash your face with some water, get a drink. Good drink. I think one of the important things is when you're like, if you're having like a late night study session, don't eat like junk food.
Yeah.
Don't cram on energy drinks, honestly. No. Energy drinks will make it worse. Soda will make it worse.
The best thing to do is eat fruit. It's a good source of natural sugars.
Okay.
It's not something that'll make you tired either. I feel like even a hot tea or coffee, although it does have caffeine, it immediately makes me feel sleepy. So I feel like also it won't, once you finish your homework or you finish studying, it'll be hard for you to go to sleep then.
Yeah.
So I feel like fruits are probably one of the best options.
Find healthier snacks, drink water instead. I say drink juices, drink water, and then probably like I'm like a big milk drinker, which is really weird. I know that's really weird for a lot of people. I know that's
in my family there's a lot of milk drinkers actually.
Really?
Yeah, I'm just not one of them.
I am definitely one of them. I drink milk at like literally every meal, and I'll just randomly drink milk.
My brother.
Okay. I know that's like a really weird thing. That's like that's a whole other tangent. Topic, but yeah, like drink and eat healthier snacks. Like it's okay, I think, a little bit of like junky stuff. Like maybe like junkiest I would go is pretzels.
Yeah.
Or but be mindful of your limits and take those breaks, and then like if you're eating or snacking or whatever while you're studying, make them healthy snacks. Try to push, and there's so many good things that you can find out there that taste good. Like literally go on Pinterest or even Google, and there's so much
you
out
can also
there.
Pre-prep snacks if you have. I mean, obviously a lot of people don't have the time, but if you have the time,
definitely
pre-prep something. I mean, sometimes I feel like at night I don't feel like studying for a test that's 2 days away, and I feel like just literally rotting on my phone, but I feel like a better way to spend my time is preparing for that night.
So connecting from limits into understanding your triggers of anxiety.
Okay.
So, this is where it'll probably get, a little heavier, but, I think everybody has personal experiences with crash outs.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I think, depending on how close you are with your friends, you've seen them crash out. Like, Sophia's seen me crash out. Like, freaking out. Yeah. Literally, like, oh my God, I can't do this. And, in those moments, like, like your aunt said again, big feelings.
Yeah, big like, sad, big mad.
Just big anything.
Big anything.
Like, everything feels like it's falling on you. That is where you really gotta say, I need to take a step back. And I know when you're cramming, it's so hard, but, like, one of the things that I do is, like, when you get tired, go to sleep.
Yeah.
Understand, like, I mean, honestly, if you're close to finishing, then I get it. You can push it a little, but go to sleep and then wake up early and finish it.
My best friend does that, where when she starts to not be able to study anymore, she'll wake up early, although it doesn't work a lot of the time.
Yeah, it worked for me last year. It's not working this year, but I'm okay.
Because we already have such a horrible sleep schedule.
Yeah.
Either way, if you can, waking up early is, I think, an incredible way to study. And studies have shown that your brain works quite well in the early hours of the day.
Yeah.
My mother tends to do this, but she'll send me these, like, watch out, like, screen time is gonna make your brain rot. And one time she sent this article about how that's the best time your brain works. I feel like that's kind of stuck with me. Never utilized it, but I feel like I should.
Honestly, like, being a morning person is really hard, but, like, when I do get up and I start my day earlier, I feel good. I feel really good. And, you get so much out of the day. Like, I remember, like, my family, we are not, I mean, I am a little bit more depending on the day. We are not morning people.
Yeah.
Like, my parents will sleep until obscene hours sometimes. Yep. And I'm like, are you getting up? But, on weekends, but, they work really hard. But the times that we do have to get up early, my mom will be like, wow, we still have so much time left in the day, and I feel like we've done so much. And I was like, yeah, this is what happens when you get up earlier. I think school kind of pulls that away because we're stuck inside a building for 7 hours, which really sucks.
Speaking of school, there are a lot of triggers of anxiety
in school.
Like
you gotta be mindful
of them. In the T-journal, public speaking is a big trigger for so many people.
I think one for me, like, in school, like, if you're playing an instrument or, anything where skill is shown, like, I think, like, a good example, now this isn't really school-oriented, but one of the things, it can connect back, one of the things, like, if I'm playing, like, a really hard piece, and there's that one section, everybody knows that one section's coming up, and you're like, oh gosh, like, this is the stress-inducing section. One of the things that my teacher, like, will say a lot is, like, she goes, if you guys start repeating in your head, oh my God, that section's coming. Okay, I just got to get through this section. You're creating those feelings of anxiety for yourself. You don't even realize it before it's even there. And then when you're there, you're super tense. And when you practice like that, it makes it worse. So you have to take it as it comes and just go with the flow and, understand that that is the point, where you are in the music. And then that's the same thing for like, taking a test or while you're in school, you're like, okay, I'm reaching that limit. I can feel it. This is where you start using calming tools. Let me take that breath. Let me become aware of my senses. Take it for as it comes. Try to slow down. If you can, if it's a lesson, try to step out if you need. Take a break. And hopefully you have friends in that class so that if you're missing it and you're really like, oh God, I can't stay in this class. Right. Like, I'm going to lose it.
Speaking of friends, they probably feel a lot of the same things that you do.
For sure.
I feel like a lot of people need to know that you're not alone.
Yeah. And, like, the friends that, you see the crash outs happening to, like, those are the people that, you can kind of trust, depending on, like, level of crash out, their response. You can test the waters with that, but, you really have to understand your limits and your triggers of anxiety so you can take a step away. And then, the spaces that you put yourself into. So I think for studying, I like being outside, so I think as it gets nicer, I'm definitely going to start doing homework outside.
I can't focus outside at all.
Really?
Nope. My best focus hours are when Rupert's in my lap and I can't get up.
Yeah, Rupert's her cat.
Yeah, Rupert's my cat.
So, yeah, that's good. Like, even having a pet, like, study buddies. Study buddies are really good.
A study buddy. Like, you and I, like, literally 2 hours ago, we're just silently working on our own.
But you gotta pick the right people.
Yeah.
Because there are definitely people that I know I can't work with.
Right.
But, like, if you work really well with that person, like me and Sophia work really well, we can talk and still get stuff done, but we can also sit in silence, and it's perfect, and I feel motivated.
It's not awkward either.
Nope. And I feel motivated to get my stuff done.
Exactly.
So, I think, we can move into managing
time limits when it comes to test taking.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a tough topic, considering that you don't know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
When you go to the test. I feel like with AP testing, it's a lot easier.
Right.
Considering that they tell you how much time you have to complete something.
And I think even in a class, you have till the end of the period, but that's still sometimes a little hit or miss depending on how your teacher hands out the test.
Yeah.
How they let you start. But I think your worst enemy is staring at the clock.
Yes.
Or constantly looking up because, if you don't realize it, that is wasting time too.
Yeah. Like calculating the amount of time you have left.
That's stressing you out.
My best test taking method has been fill out, like if it's a multiple choice, for example, it's fill out every question as it comes.
Yeah.
Even if I don't know the answer, fill it out and then star it.
Yes, that's what I do. Anytime I notice myself struggling on a question or I start overthinking or I don't know what I'm doing, star and move on.
Exactly.
You've got to move on.
With an open-ended question test, like in our math test sometimes, if I don't know the answer, I won't stay on it for more than like 3 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
Like, I'll stare at it, I'll try something, and I'll be like, this isn't working, move on.
Learn how to delegate your time so that you keep yourself within that calm headspace, because I notice that the longer I look at the question that I'm not understanding, the more stress, and then I start freaking out and being like, oh God, I don't remember this. And then, you're like, you know what? I can't do this. And you take yourself out of that space and you're like, I'm moving on to another question.
I feel like the ability to move on is really important when it comes to test taking.
Yeah. Or just like, knowing where you should start even. Like sometimes starting at the beginning of the test could be like your enemy. Yeah. Like sometimes you should maybe start with the longer problems. Like if you know you can get them done, like if you know how to do them, I'd say start with them. Like,
and I feel like starting in the middle of a test or like in the middle of the beginning page or something helps that take away the anxiety of I need to start from A to Z. I feel like starting from like M to Z and then going back to A is a lot
more helpful. Look at how many questions are on the test first so that I, can also delegate my delegate my time wisely.
I
think that depends.
I'm going to disagree with that, considering that I feel like that takes more time out of my test taking. And I feel like calculating
personal preference. Well, yeah. I think that's personal preference. I mean, I don't try to calculate it, but if I see, like, oh, God, there's a ton of questions. Like, you know,
then you can realize you need to move faster.
Yeah. Like, I think, you know, personally for us, when we do, like, the math practice test, like, sometimes it's exactly like the practice test, and it's the same amount of questions, and I'm like, okay, I did okay with this last night when we did the mock test, or if there's less questions, I'm like, okay, maybe I can take a little bit more time.
There's never more questions.
Yeah, there's never, actually, there might have been the one time, I think.
Oh, there was one.
There was one.
And that was the one that I think we both didn't do great on. But yeah, I feel like knowing that, like, especially making a practice test for yourself that you know is going to be a lot longer than it is on the test.
Oh, yeah,
can be really helpful. Because then also practicing your practice problems and getting faster at them can also help with test anxiety, knowing that you know how to do questions fast.
And honestly, I say look at the resources, like, because a lot of teachers put resources in there.
But they don't talk about them.
They don't talk about them. So if you feel as if you need resources, I mean, you can go on YouTube. There's billions of videos out there. And then go talk to your teachers. I mean, I think depending on how the teacher acts, you know, you can decide whether or not you want to do that. But honestly, like, look for the resources. Those are really helpful. Resources. So the main takeaway would be, you know, find your structured study plans. Like, you know, manage your time wisely and understand your limits and triggers, you know.
So I know we've been saying this, like, a lot, but seriously, Sophia and I are not experts. Yes. So if you feel you need any sort of help, please contact a medical or mental health professional.
And also, again, to reiterate, please utilize the Suicide Prevention Hotline by dialing 998, which will also be provided in the description below.
So that pretty much wraps up our teen textbooks for this week. Thank you so much for listening to our 6th episode.
I hope you'll join us next week on Sip and Spill.